Hello everyone, I'm Chris Tabbett, and in this video I'm going to be talking a little bit about an excerpt from this book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now, this book I'm almost completed with this book. I'm probably about 3/4 of the way done, and it's been one of the most entertaining reads that I've had in a long time. It's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with, the hottest investment strategy or the biggest prediction in crypto or the stock market for 2022 or anything like that. These are money lessons that have a basis in things like human behavior and psychology, in sociology, and philosophy, and I really think the lessons that I've taken out of this book so far, it's one of those books that you don't even want to keep on the bookshelf. You keep it right next to you on your bedside table, and you one of those books that you pick up every night and you just read a little section of it and then put it down and come back to it the next day. It's just, some of the lessons are just timeless, and so much wisdom that comes from this book. But I'll read the excerpt now that really hit home for me. It was something that I've been struggling with internally. I'm a 30-year-old male, and when it comes to things like money and success and achievement and all that kind of stuff, I can sometimes get caught up in the ego and the belief that I need to achieve a certain amount of wealth to feel worthy and to gain social status and to be admired. And so this message that I read out of this book, this lesson, was really hit home for me. So when you see someone driving a nice car, you rarely think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool. Instead you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. Subconscious or not, this is how people think. There is a paradox here. People tend to want wealth to signal to others that they should be liked and admired. But in reality, those other people often bypass admiring you, not because they think wealth is admirable, but because they use your wealth as a benchmark for their own desire to be liked and admired. The author, Morgan Housel, uses a phrase for this, I guess, and it's called the whole chapter is called "Man in the Car Paradox," and it really hit home for me, that one. That we believe we need money and certain material possessions so that other people can look at us and admire us and approve of us and like us, and so we can achieve a sense of status and a sense of worthiness, fundamentally, I guess. But it's flawed in the sense that if you were the person in that car driving a nice car, people aren't walking on the side path looking at you driving that car thinking, you're such a great person, you're such a worthy person, you're such an admirable person. They're looking inside your car and picturing themselves inside that car and imagining themselves having people on the side path walk past them and admire them. So really they're not admiring you per se. They're admiring the imagination that they're having of being in that car, being admired by other people, which is the illusion. It takes me back to something that Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about, how a lot of people are working jobs that they don't like to fund a lifestyle and to buy things that they don't need to impress people that they don't even like. That kind of related in some way to the excerpt. After doing that reflection, I started to think about that quote from Gary Vaynerchuk, and it kind of tied in to the same thing. I refer back to an essay that I wrote earlier this year in a sociology course that I took at university. This sociology course was specifically based around the topic of happiness. And we pretty much did a full-blown sociological analysis on happiness, and that was really, really difficult because, what the hell is happiness? We don't know exactly. No one really knows what happiness is. There's philosophical theories, there's psychological theories, but it seems as though with something like happiness, no one can agree, no one can come to an agreement on a specific definition. And that's quite evident because between cultures, the definition of happiness itself differs. There was an essay that I had to do, and it was on the basis of economics and happiness. It was that component of sociological analysis, which usually involves many factors like philosophy and science and politics and economics. But in this specific essay that I was writing, I had to hone in on economics and happiness. And I had to form an argument as to why something like GDP, gross domestic product, is a poor measure if we want to find out the happiness levels of a nation. And I had to argue against the fact that GDP is a good measure of happiness. And one of the arguments I used, I referenced an article, and it was a study from the US that found that $75,000 per year in income was pretty much the threshold in which any increase in income after that does not yield a higher level of happiness. So let that sink in. So $75,000 per year in income. After that, any dollar above that, and happiness levels did not increase. Now, of course, in the case of someone who's coming from circumstances of poverty, any increase in income is going to positively impact levels of happiness. It's going to increase those levels of happiness. But once you get to that $75,000 mark, and this is in the US, of course, in between countries it differs depending on the dollar. But once you get to that $75,000 per year in income, happiness does not increase with any extra dollar. Now, that's not to say there's no utility in wealth. Of course, you want to earn as much as you possibly can. And it seems as though doing some certain things will yield higher levels of income than doing certain other things. But that doesn't mean that you should go for the things that do yield higher income. Because you could fall into the trap of choosing something that you don't want to do. And that's where I go on to the next message to say that knowing when enough is a key component here. It's another important lesson to know when enough is enough and to not get greedy in the pursuit of more money. Because if you don't know when enough is enough, then you're going to start doing things possibly at the expense of your health, at the expense of your happiness, at the expense of your relationship, or even at the expense of your freedom. You might start to do things that are a detriment to all of that stuff. Like in the case of a lot of wealthy people who become addicted to earning more and more and more money, thinking that next benchmark is going to be the point where they're going to finally reach this level of happiness or contentment that they've been searching for, but it never comes. While there is utility in wealth, and while you want to make as much as you possibly can, you also want to draw that line and know when enough is enough, not get greedy, and make sure that you find your point of enough, because everyone's point of enough is going to differ. But it's important that you find your enough and you stick to that course. Otherwise, you're going to be doing things possibly at the expense of your health, your happiness, your relationships, and possibly your freedom. So this book has taught me so far the psychology of money, many lessons that have nothing to do with, technical analysis or watching the stock market or the best investment for a millennial. This is all lessons about money, wealth, greed, happiness, all in the basis of psychology and sociology and philosophy. And that's what I really love about this book. I highly recommend it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoy.